Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're going way back to explore a really interesting period in Indian history.
Really interesting.
We're going to unravel how this small trading company,
Yeah.
the British East India Company, how they became so powerful, they ended up controlling this massive part of the subcontinent.
It's wild.
It's a story about ambition and conflict and all these weird twists and turns, so buckle up.
Yeah, it's really interesting, how the company rose up at the same time as this once mighty empire was falling apart. It's like a giant tree that's slowly losing all its leaves, and this vine just starts snaking its way up the trunk,
Okay,
taking advantage of that weakness.
I can picture that.
Yeah.
But before we get to the vine, I think we should talk about the tree a bit.
Right.
What was going on with the Mughal Empire before the company even shows up?
Okay, so by the early 18th century, the Mughal Empire,
Right.
they were this huge force across India, but they were starting to fall apart. After Emperor Aurangzeb died in 1707, his successors, they just couldn't hold it together.
It's like a family business where the kids just can't agree how to run things after the founder dies?
So internal conflict weakens the empire.
Yeah.
And I guess that creates an opening for other people to step in.
Exactly. You've got these ambitious governors, the Subadars,
Okay.
basically like regional managers for the Mughals,
Right.
and they start flexing their muscles. They see a chance to carve out their own little kingdoms
Yeah.
and become like mini emperors themselves.
IPC.
Then you've got the wealthy landowners,
Yeah.
the zamindars,
Okay.
who also have tons of power in their local areas.
Right.
They're like the local power brokers, the ones who can make or break things for the Mughals.
So it's kind of like a game of tug of war with everybody pulling in different directions.
Exactly. A great way to put it.
Yeah.
And right into this chaotic scene walks in the British East India Company, not as conquerors,
Right.
but as these traders just looking for a sweet deal. But they weren't the only ones.
I was going to say there had to be others.
Oh, yeah. You had other European powers,
Mm-hmm.
the Portuguese, of course.
The Dutch, the French,
Right. Okay.
all wanting a piece of that juicy Indian Ocean trade.
So we're talking spices.
Spices, textiles, precious metals.
Wow.
India was like a treasure chest everybody wanted to unlock.
And I'm guessing it wasn't exactly a friendly competition?
Oh, no, not at all.
Yeah.
It was cutthroat.
Okay.
Like a poker game with super high stakes. And these players weren't afraid to cheat, bluff, even use force to win.
Wow.
I mean, these companies, they were loaded with weapons, ships, cannons, attacking each other's boats, blocking trade routes, anything to protect their turf and squeeze out their rivals.
Wow.
They even built these fortified trading posts, basically like little fortresses,
Right.
to protect their stuff.
So they came to trade,
Right.
but they definitely weren't afraid of a fight.
Yeah.
So where does Bengal fit into all of this?
Yeah.
I know it becomes super important for the company later on.
Well, Bengal, it's like the company's launching pad.
Okay.
It's where they really go from just traders to something way more powerful. They set up shop on the banks of the Hooghly River in 1651.
Okay.
They called it a factory,
A factory.
even though it was more like a trading post.
Yeah.
Where their factors would manage everything.
Yeah.
And over time, they slowly expand. They go from this tiny outpost to this fortified settlement.
They're starting to get comfortable.
Right.
How did the Mughals react to all of this?
At first the Mughals were more focused on their own internal problems.
Yeah.
They saw the company as kind of a minor nuisance at most. But as the company got bolder,
Right.
tensions started to flare up, especially with the Nawabs of Bengal.
So who exactly were these Nawabs?
The Nawabs, they were basically the regional rulers of Bengal,
Right.
appointed by the Mughal emperor, but they had lots of autonomy.
Okay.
Think of them like powerful governors collecting taxes, keeping order, and they had their own armies. Figures like Murshid Quali Khan, Alavardi Khan, and later Siraj-ud-Daulah, all strong leaders. They started to see the company's growing influence as a direct threat to their power.
So you have this clash of ambitions.
Exactly. The company wanted to rake in the cash.
Of course.
They wanted more trade concessions, no taxes, and more territory.
Right.
And the Nawabs, they wanted to keep their own power. They weren't going to let some foreign company boss them around on their own turf.
Yeah.
This clash was going to lead to trouble.
Oh, I bet.
Yeah.
So what were the main friction points between the company and the Nawabs?
Well, the Nawabs accused the company of all sorts of things.
Okay.
Evading taxes, abusing their privileges, fortifying their settlements without permission,
Wow.
even meddling in local politics to help their buddies.
Oh, geez.
They wanted more tribute payments for trading rights, and they tried to limit the company's activities.
Right.
And the company, of course, they claimed the Nawabs were blocking free trade and making crazy demands.
Yeah.
They said they needed more land, better defenses, and less interference to really thrive.
Classic power struggle.
Totally traditional rulers versus this upstart company.
So what happens next? How does all this tension boil over?
Things get really intense with Siraj-ud-Daulah.
Okay.
He was the Nawab of Bengal, young and fiercely independent. He didn't trust the company one bit,
Right.
and he saw their growing power as a huge threat to his rule.
Yeah.
So when they tried to back one of his rivals for the throne, Siraj-ud-Daulah decided to take action.
He's like, enough is enough.
Exactly. In 1756, he marches on the company's factory at Qasim Bazaar,
Okay.
captures their officials, takes their goods, blocks their ships.
Wow, that's a bold move.
Yeah. And then he sets his sights on Calcutta, the company's main base in Bengal.
So he's really trying to assert his dominance.
Absolutely. He's determined to put this upstart company in its place.
Whoa, things escalated quickly.
They did.
How did the company respond to all of this?
Oh, they weren't going to back down.
Yeah.
They sent forces from Madras,
Yeah.
their base on the southeastern coast,
Okay.
led by this guy, Robert Clive, who would become like a legend in their history.
Oh, yeah, Robert Clive.
Yeah.
He's a name that comes up a lot when you talk about the East India Company.
Right.
What was he like?
Clive, he was a brilliant military strategist. Ambitious, ruthless, and willing to take risks.
Sounds dangerous.
He was. He knew going head-to-head with Siraj-ud-Daulah's giant army would be a stupid move.
Yeah.
So he took a different approach.
Okay.
More cunning and manipulation than brute force.
Sounds sneaky.
He was a smart guy.
What was his plan?
Clive knew the only way to beat Siraj-ud-Daulah was to divide his forces from the inside. So he secretly made a deal with one of the Nawab's own commanders, Mir Jafar,
Okay.
who wasn't happy with his position and wanted more power.
So Clive saw an opportunity to exploit some of those divisions.
Exactly. He promised Mir Jafar the throne of Bengal if he helped.
Wow, so he's playing both sides.
Yeah,
This Mir Jafar sounds like a real wild card.
he was.
What happens next?
So the two armies, they clash at Plassey in June 1757.
Okay.
It's a huge moment for the company. As the battle raged, Mir Jafar kept his word. He held back his troops, letting Clive's forces outmaneuver and crush Siraj-ud-Daulah's army.
So a decisive victory for the company.
Yeah, and it wasn't just brute force.
Right.
It was strategy and betrayal that won the day.
So the Battle of Plassey, this is a major turning point.
It is.
What happens to Siraj-ud-Daulah after he loses?
He tries to run but gets captured and later executed.
Wow.
Just like Clive promised, Mir Jafar becomes the new Nawab of Bengal,
Okay.
a puppet ruler beholden to the company.
So the company, they've basically won control of Bengal through this puppet ruler.
Well, not quite. Plassey was huge, no doubt, but it didn't give them total control right away.
Okay.
It's a big shift in the power dynamic, but the company's journey from traders to rulers is far from over.
That's a good point.
It's just the beginning of a much bigger story.
So what happens next?
Yeah.
Does the company just take over Bengal right after Plassey?
It's funny, they're actually hesitant to rule directly at first. They'd rather pull the strings from behind the scenes,
Okay.
using guys like Mir Jafar to do their dirty work.
They're like, let someone else handle it.
Exactly. They think it's cheaper and less likely to cause a fuss with the locals.
A hands-off approach.
For now, at least.
But I'm guessing it wasn't as easy as they hoped.
Nope. Even puppets have their own ideas about how things should run.
Of course.
And Mir Jafar,
Right.
even though he owes his position to the company,
Yeah.
he's not content to be their little errand boy. He still has his own goals, his own loyal people,
Okay.
and his own ideas about how to govern Bengal.
So he wasn't as easy to control as they thought.
Not real.
Did he start pushing back against the company's demands?
Oh, totally. The company was always on his case,
yeah.
wanting better trade deals, lower taxes, basically anything to boost their profits.
Right.
And they wanted him to crack down on any local merchants or officials who got in their way.
They're really putting the squeeze on him.
Yeah, and you can imagine how much tension this caused. Mir Jafar's stuck between a rock and a hard place.
Yeah.
He knows the company can get rid of him if he steps out of line,
Right.
but he's still the Nawab.
Yeah.
He has to keep some authority and independence to keep his own people happy.
So he's trying to walk this tightrope.
Exactly. But it's a losing battle.
Yeah.
The company keeps demanding more, and Mir Jafar keeps giving in,
Right.
which makes him look weak and unpopular.
This creates a vicious cycle.
Yeah, it weakens him and makes him even more reliant on the company.
Exactly.
And the company, seeing this weakness, they decide to take advantage.
Cool.
They start looking for a replacement, someone who will be more obedient and do what they want.
So they're going to ditch their puppet and get a new one.
Yep.
Who do they have in mind?
They go for another one of Sirajuddaullah's old commanders,
Okay.
Mir Qasim.
Mir Kazim.
They figure he'll be grateful for their support and do whatever they want.
It's like a game of musical chairs with the throne of Bengal.
Yeah, but here's the twist. Mir Qasim, he turns out to be way tougher than Mir Jafar.
Really?
He's smart, ambitious, and determined to be in charge.
So the puppet fights back.
Yeah, it's pretty unexpected.
What does he do?
Well, first he realizes to break free from the company, he needs to be stronger.
Okay.
So he starts reforming the administration, streamlining taxes, even building his own army separate from the company's.
Wow, he's building his own power base.
Yep. Pretty bold move.
How does the company react to this?
They're furious, of course.
Yeah.
They see it as a challenge to their authority. Like, how dare this puppet try to cut the strings?
Yeah.
They accuse him of betraying them and messing with their plans.
And I bet they weren't thrilled about him building his own army.
Not at all. They always used their military to get what they wanted.
Right.
And now this Nawab's trying to create a force that could actually fight back.
So things are escalating again.
Big time.
Does this lead to another showdown?
Oh, yeah. In 1763, all that tension explodes into war. The company declares war on Mir Qasim. They accuse him of all sorts of stuff and say they're going to put Mir Jafar back on the throne.
Round 2.
Pretty much. And this time, the stakes are even higher.
Okay.
Mir Qasim knows if he loses, it's over for him.
Right.
And probably the end of any real independence for Bengal.
Yeah.
So he makes a big move. He forms an alliance with two powerful rulers
Okay.
who are also worried about the company's growing power.
Okay.
Shah Alam II, the Mughal emperor,
Okay.
and Shujaudullah, the Nawab of Awadh.
So he's building a real coalition.
Yeah, he's not messing around.
This is a game changer.
Totally.
What does the company do? Are they scared?
They're definitely worried. This isn't just some little rebellion.
Right.
This alliance could seriously threaten their whole position in India.
Yeah.
But they're not backing down either.
Okay.
They gather their forces and get ready for a fight.
So where does this clash of the titans happen?
They meet at Buxar in 1764.
Buxar.
It's a massive battle, one of the biggest ever in India at that time.
Wow.
The company's army, led by Major Hector Munro, they're actually outnumbered by the combined forces of Mir Qasim, the Mughal emperor, and the Nawab of Awadh.
So the odds are against them.
Yeah, but they pull off a victory.
How?
Well, even though they're outnumbered, the company's troops have better weapons, better training, and better artillery. Plus, the other alliance, they're not exactly a united front.
Right.
Mir Qasim Shah Alam II and Shujaudullah,
Yeah.
they don't really get along.
Yeah.
And that lack of coordination hurts them on the battlefield.
So the company's superior firepower and the other side's disunity wins the day.
Exactly. Buxar is a huge victory for the company. It smashes the alliance against them and sends shockwaves across India.
Wow.
It shows everyone they're not messing around. They will use force to crush anyone who gets in their way.
So what happens to the alliance leaders?
Mir Qasim, he's defeated and runs away into exile.
Wow.
Shah Alam II, the Mughal emperor, he's basically forced to become a puppet of the company. His once mighty empire is just a shadow of its former self. And Shujaudullah, the Nawab of Awadh, he loses a bunch of territory to the company.
Jeez.
And he has to accept a British resident at his court.
A British resident.
Basically, a company official who's going to watch his every move and make sure he behaves.
Okay, so they're really asserting their control.
Yeah, Buxar really solidifies the company's power in northern India.
So after this, do they finally take over Bengal directly?
Yeah, Buxar was the turning point. It convinced them that these puppet rulers were too much of a headache.
Right.
They realized to really lock in their interests and make the most money they needed to run Bengal themselves.
So we're messing around?
Nope.
Yeah.
They're ready to be the puppet masters now.
Yeah. So how do they make that happen?
Well, they get their chance in 1765.
Okay.
Remember Shah Alam II, the Mughal emperor who got trounced at Buxar?
Yes.
He's desperate for the company's help.
Yeah.
He'll give them anything to get back in their good graces. So he makes a deal with the company.
The deal.
A deal that's going to have huge consequences.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What was the deal?
He gives them the Diwani of Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa.
The Diwani.
Yeah.
That sounds important. What does it mean?
The Diwani, basically, it was the right to collect land revenue in those provinces.
Hmm.
Think of it like the ultimate cash cow,
Yeah.
land revenue. It was the main source of income for any government back then.
Right.
It's like they were given control of the treasury, the lifeblood of the whole region.
So the company, they go from traders to tax collectors.
Yeah,
They're basically replacing the Mughal administration.
you got it. It was a huge power grab.
Yeah.
It gave them direct control over tons of wealth in Bengal and the surrounding areas.
This is massive.
It was a major turning point with huge implications.
Okay, before we go any further, I just want to make sure I understand this Diwani thing.
Sure.
Can you just define it for us and explain why it was such a big deal for the company?
Absolutely. So the Diwani, in simple terms, it was the right to collect land revenue. This meant the company was now in charge of figuring out, collecting, and managing all the taxes paid by farmers and landowners in Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa.
Wow.
This gave them incredible financial power and control over the whole region.
Yeah.
It let them pay for their army, expand their trade, and basically become the rulers of Bengal.
So it's like they were handed the keys to the kingdom.
Pretty much. Or at
Yeah.
least the keys to the royal treasury.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, how did all this new power and wealth affect the company officials? Did it change their lives? How did they see themselves?
That's a great question, and it leads us to the world of the nabobs.
Okay, nabobs.
Yeah.
That sounds interesting. Tell me more.
I will. So yeah, the company, they try to rule Bengal through this Mir Jafar guy.
Right, they're hand-picked Nawab.
Exactly. Like,
Yeah.
let him do all the hard work.
But I bet it wasn't that easy.
Oh no. Even puppets have their own ideas, you know?
Of course.
Mir Jafar, even though he owes his position to the company,
Right.
he's not just going to be their little errand boy. He still wants power. He's got his own loyal people.
Yeah, his own vision for Bengal. So he wasn't as pliable as they'd hoped.
Not really.
Did he start resisting their demands?
Oh yeah. The company, they were constantly on him,
Okay.
wanting better trade deals, lower taxes, you name it.
They wanted to squeeze every last rupee out of him.
Exactly. And they wanted him to clamp down on any locals who got in their way.
So merchants, officials, anyone who challenged them.
Yep. Mir Jafar was caught in a tough spot.
Yeah.
On one hand, he owes the company everything.
Right.
He knows they could crush him if he doesn't play ball.
Yeah.
But he's still the Nawab. He's got to maintain some authority.
To keep his own people happy.
Exactly. It was a balancing act.
Hmm.
But he was losing.
Yeah.
The company's demands kept growing.
Yeah.
Mir Jafar kept giving in,
Right.
which made him look weak,
It's a vicious cycle.
totally weakening him and making him more dependent on the company.
In the company, they see this happening
Yeah,
and they decide to exploit it.
pretty much. They start shopping around for a new puppet.
So they're ditching Mir Jafar. Who do they pick this time?
They go for another one of Sirajuddaullah's old commanders, Mir Qasim.
Mir Qasim. Okay.
They figured he'd be grateful and easy to control.
So it's like musical chairs with the throne of Bengal.
Yeah, but here's where things get interesting.
Oh, really?
Mir Qasim, he turns out to be a lot tougher than they expected.
So the puppet fights back.
Exactly. He's smart, he's ambitious, and he wants to be in charge.
What does he do?
Well, he realizes to break free from the company, he needs his own power.
Okay.
So he starts reforming the administration, making tax collection more efficient, and he even starts building his own army.
His own army, separate from the company's forces.
Yep, he's creating his own power base.
That's a bold move.
It was the company, they were not happy.
I bet they saw this as a direct challenge.
Oh, yeah, like how dare he?
Right.
They accused them of betraying them and undermining their plans.
And I'm sure they weren't pleased about him building his own army.
Not at all. They always relied on their military dominance. And now this guy's trying to challenge them.
So tensions are rising again.
Oh, yeah. Things are about to explode.
Does this lead to war?
It does. In 1763, they declare war on Mir Qasim.
Okay.
They accuse him of all sorts of things and say they're going to put Mir Jafar back in power.
Round 2 of the battle for Bengal.
Pretty much. But this time it's different.
How so?
Mir Qasim, he knows this is a fight for his survival.
Yeah.
If he loses, it's over for him. And Bengal loses any hope of independence.
Right.
So he does something really smart. He forms an alliance.
An alliance. So.
Yeah, with 2 other powerful rulers who are also worried about the company.
Oh.
Shah Alam II, the Mughal emperor,
Okay.
and Shuja-ud-Dawla, the Nawab of Awadh.
Wow. He's building a real coalition against the company.
Yeah, he's not taking any chances.
This is a huge shift in the power dynamic.
It is. The company's definitely worried.
I bet.
This alliance could seriously threaten their whole position in India.
Yeah.
But they're not going to back down.
Of course not.
They gather their forces and prepare for a showdown.
Where does this clash happen?
Buxar in 1764.
Bucks.
It
Okay.
was a massive battle, one of the biggest ever fought in India.
Wow.
The company's army, they were actually outnumbered.
Really?
Yeah, by the combined forces of Mir Qasim, the Mughal emperor, and the Nawab of Awadh.
So the odds were against them.
They were, but they still won.
How did they pull that off?
Well, their troops were better equipped and trained.
Right.
They had better artillery.
Right.
And the other alliance, they weren't really a united front.
There were divisions among them.
Yeah, Mir Qasim Shah Alam and Shuja Dawla, they didn't trust each other.
Right.
And that lack of coordination hurt them in the battle.
So the company's superior firepower and the other side's disunity wins the day.
Exactly. Buxar was a decisive victory.
What happened to the alliance leaders?
Mir Qasim, he's defeated and flees into exile.
Wow.
Shah Alam, the Mughal emperor, he's basically forced to become a puppet of the company.
So his once mighty empire is now under their control.
Pretty much. And Shuja-Dawla, the Nawab of Awadh. He has to give up a bunch of his territory to the company,
Jeez.
and he has to accept a British resident at his court.
A British resident? What's that?
Basically, a company official who's gonna keep an eye on him and make sure he doesn't cause any trouble.
So they're really tightening their grip on power.
Oh, yeah. Buxar was a game changer.
Did they finally take direct control of Bengal after this?
Yes, Buxar was the final straw.
Okay.
It showed them that these puppet rulers were just too unpredictable. They realized to really get what they wanted, they needed to rule directly.
No more messing around.
Nope, they were done with puppets.
So how did they make that happen?
Well, it was actually Shah Alam, the Mughal emperor, who gave them the opportunity.
Really? The guy they defeated at Buxar.
Yeah, he was desperate for their support.
He needed their help to stay in power.
Exactly. So he made a deal with the company, a deal that would change everything.
Okay, I'm listening. What was this deal?
He granted them the Diwani of Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa.
The Diwani, what's that more?
It was the right to collect land revenue in those provinces.
Land revenue. That sounds important.
It was the main source of income for any government back then.
Okay.
Basically, Shah Alam handed them control of the treasury.
So the company went from traders to tax collectors.
Yeah, it was a huge power grab.
They were now the de facto rulers of Bengal.
Pretty much. And it had massive implications for everyone.
I bet. But before we go any further, can we just take a minute to define what the Diwani was and why it was so important?
Of course. So the Diwani, in simple terms, it was the right to collect taxes from the land.
Okay.
This meant the company was now in charge of assessing, collecting, and managing all the taxes paid by farmers and landowners in Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa.
Wow, so they had incredible financial power.
They did. It allowed them to fund their army, expand their trade, and basically control the entire region.
So it's like they were given the keys to the kingdom.
Exactly, and it had a huge impact on the company's officials.
How so?
Well, it led to the rise of the nabobs.
Nabobs, who were they?
Yeah, nabobs. They were these company officials who made absolute fortunes in India.
Like super rich.
Oh, yeah. Think 18th century millionaires, billionaires even.
Wow, so they were living the high life.
Some of them were, yeah, big time.
Okay.
They built these huge mansions through these crazy parties.
Oh, wow.
Surrounded themselves with luxury servants, exotic animals, you name it.
So like the finest silks, the most expensive jewels.
Exactly. All about showing off their wealth and status.
I bet there were tons of stories and gossip back in Britain about these.
Oh, yeah, tons. People were fascinated and kind of scandalized by it all.
Right.
They became these symbols of the company's success,
Mm.
but also of excess and corruption. You know, there were cartoons, satirical writings making fun of them.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah, making fun of spending their attempts to climb the social ladder back home.
Right.
Even their adoption of Indian customs.
Mm.
Some people saw that as going a bit native.
It's interesting how these lines get blurred between colonizer and colonized.
Yeah, that cultural fusion or maybe clash. It's a big theme in the company's story. But it's important to remember that this lavish lifestyle for a few, it was built on the backs of the people they were exploiting.
Right, of course.
Yeah.
So while some were living it up, the company's ambitions were still growing.
Oh, yeah. Bengal was just the start.
Oh, okay.
They had a taste of power and they wanted more.
Hmm.
Throughout the late 18th and early 19th centuries, they just kept expanding their control across India.
So how did they do it? Did they just march in and conquer everyone?
It was more complicated than that.
Okay.
They used a few different strategies.
Okay.
One tactic was to install these residents in Indian states.
Residents, what were those?
They were company officials.
Okay.
basically acting as advisors to the local rulers.
Advisors.
Or maybe more like overseers.
Okay.
They use their influence to sway decisions in the company's favor,
Hmm.
secure good trade deals, and keep an eye on everything happening in these states.
So keep your friends close and your enemies closer.
Exactly. They also started forming these subsidiary alliances with Indian rulers.
Subsidiary alliances.
Yeah, they were supposed to be partnerships, but
Right.
really it was a way for the company to take control.
How so?
Well, under these agreements, Indian rulers had to disband their own armies
Really?
and rely on the company for protection. But this protection came at a price.
Yeah.
They had to pay for the upkeep of the company's troops.
So the company gets to expand its military,
Right.
and the Indian rulers have to foot the bill.
Exactly. And if a ruler couldn't pay
Right.
or dared to step out of line, the company had an excuse to invade and take over.
It's like a rigged game.
It kind of was.
Can you give us some examples of how this played out?
Sure, take Awadh in 1801.
Okay.
The Nawab there, he had to give up half his territory to the company
Wow.
just because he couldn't pay for these subsidiary forces.
Mhm.
Then there's Hyderabad.
Right.
They also lost huge chunks of land because of supposed debts to the company.
So they were always finding ways to justify taking more land.
Yeah, one of their most controversial tactics was the doctrine of lapse,
Okay.
introduced by Lord Dalhousie, who was Governor General in the mid-1800s.
The doctrine of lapse. What was that?
It basically said if an Indian ruler died without a male heir,
Right.
his kingdom automatically went to the company.
Wow.
They claimed it was to prevent instability,
Right.
but really it was just another excuse to grab land.
So they were manipulating the rules of succession.
Exactly. And they used this to take over several kingdoms,
Right.
Satara, Sambalpur, Udaipur, Nagpur, and famously, Shansi.
Jhansi ruled by Rani Lakshmibai.
Yeah,
She fought hard against British rule.
she did. She became a symbol of resistance during the 1857 uprising.
Right. It's important to remember that not everyone just accepted the company's expansion.
Absolutely. There was resistance every step of the way.
People fighting for their sovereignty, their way of life.
Exactly. Those stories are important.
They are. But for now, maybe we can shift gears a bit and talk about how the company actually governed these vast territories.
Yeah.
They couldn't just rule by force, right?
No, they needed systems of governance
Right.
to make their rule seem legit, ensure they kept getting revenue and maintain order.
So they needed a proper administration.
Yeah, and that led to some big changes in how India was run.
Okay, let's talk about those changes. What kind of administrative structures did they set up?
Well, as they expanded, they realized they needed a more organized system. They couldn't just rely on informal arrangements anymore.
Right.
They needed something more bureaucratic,
Oh.
something that could handle collecting taxes, keeping order, dispensing justice, and managing resources.
Across this huge territory.
Exactly. It was a big job.
So who were some of the key figures in building this new system?
One of the most important was Warren Hastings.
Warren Hastings.
He became the first Governor General of Bengal in 1773.
Okay.
He's a controversial figure, but he played a big role in shaping the company's administration.
What were some of the key changes he made?
Well, before the company came along, the legal system in India,
Right.
it was mostly based on traditional Hindu and Muslim laws
Okay.
interpreted by local authorities. Hastings wanted to create a more unified system,
Okay.
one that would be easier for the company to control,
Right.
and that would promote what they saw as rational and just principles.
So they were trying to impose their own legal system?
Not exactly. It was more about creating a hybrid system,
But
combining British law with existing Indian traditions.
can you give us an example of how that worked?
Sure. Hastings set up a new system of courts in each district,
Right.
with separate courts for criminal and civil cases. European district collectors, they became the main guys in local administration.
Okay.
They presided over these courts,
Right.
and they relied on Hindu and Muslim legal experts to help them interpret the laws.
So they were trying to blend British legal ideas with Indian practices.
Yeah, but the power definitely shifted to the British side. They thought their system was better. And they gradually introduced more and more British law into the Indian system.
Did everyone like these changes?
Not really. Some people saw it as an attack on their traditional authority and customs.
Right.
And sometimes British law clashed with local beliefs,
Yeah.
which caused tension and resentment.
It sounds like a messy process.
It was. What about revenue collection?
Oh, yeah. That must have been a huge challenge.
It was. Remember the Diwani gave the company the right to collect land revenue,
Right.
but they needed a way to actually collect it from millions of farmers.
That sounds like a logistical nightmare.
It was. At first, they tried working through the zamindars.
The Zamindars?
Yeah, the wealthy landowners who traditionally collected taxes from the peasants.
Okay.
But this system was super corrupt.
Mm.
The zamindars often exploited the peasants and kept some of the money for themselves.
So the company needed a better system.
Yeah, one that was more efficient and reliable.
Right.
They tried a few different approaches.
Okay.
In some areas, they introduced the permanent settlement.
The permanent settlement.
Yeah.
What was that?
It fixed the amount of revenue the zamindars had to pay.
Okay.
They thought this would encourage them to invest in their land and increase productivity.
So a more stable and predictable system.
Yeah, but it had some downsides.
Yeah.
It often led to overtaxation of the farmers,
Mm.
and it made the zamindars even more powerful.
Okay.
They became a new class of wealthy landowners who were loyal to the company.
So it benefited the company and the elites, but not the average person?
Pretty much. In other areas, they tried the Riot-Wari system.
Riot-Wari.
Yeah, where they dealt directly with the farmers.
Cutting out the zamindars.
Exactly. But the system also had problems.
Like what?
It often led to overtaxation, which forced many farmers into debt,
Right.
and it required a huge bureaucracy to manage it all.
So regardless of the system, the goal was to extract as much wealth as possible.
Yeah, the company was all about profit.
Right.
They wanted to make their shareholders rich.
And they did that by exploiting India's resources.
Exactly. It's a dark side of the story.
It is. But let's not forget about the people who made this whole system work.
Yeah.
The company's army.
Right.
They were crucial to their success.
Absolutely. The company's army, it's a fascinating story in itself.
What was it like in the early days?
Well, at first, they relied on European soldiers
Okay.
brought over from Britain.
Hmm.
But as they expanded, that became really expensive.
Right.
And those European troops, they weren't always suited to India's climate.
Yeah.
They needed a different kind of fighting force.
So what did they do?
They started recruiting locally.
Okay.
They raised these regiments of sepoys.
Sepoys.
Indian soldiers trained and equipped like European troops.
Mm.
These sepoys, they became the backbone of the company's army.
They were the ones fighting their wars and controlling their territory.
Yeah, they played a huge role.
Tell me more about these sepoys. Where did they come from?
They came from different backgrounds,
Yeah.
but many were from peasant communities.
Yeah.
They were attracted by the steady pay, the chance to travel,
Yeah.
and the social status that came with being a soldier.
So it was a way to improve their lives.
For many, it was.
Hmm.
But life as a sepoy wasn't easy.
I imagine not.
Strict discipline, often serving far from home,
Right.
and always facing danger.
It's a double-edged sword.
It was a chance for advancement, but with a lot of sacrifices.
And as the company's power grew,
Right.
the demands on the sepoys grew too.
They did. They were sent to fight all over Burma, Afghanistan, Egypt,
Wow.
often in really harsh conditions.
That must have been tough.
It was. And the company started to ignore their cultural and religious beliefs.
Hmm.
This created a lot of resentment,
Yeah.
which eventually boiled over in the huge uprising of 1857.
The sepoy mutiny.
Right.
So the sepoys who helped the company rise to power,
Yeah,
they also played a role in its downfall.
they did.
Mhm.
It's a reminder that even the most powerful empires are vulnerable and that people who are exploited will eventually fight back.
Wow. What a story.
It is.
We've gone from the decline of the Moguls to the rise of the company,
Yeah.
their expansion, their administration, the nabobs, the sepoys.
It's a lot to take in.
It is. It's a really complex and fascinating story.
It shows the huge impact the company had on India,
Right.
shaping its politics, its economy, its society for centuries.
It makes you think about the legacies of colonialism,
Yeah.
both the good and the bad. It reminds us that history is about the choices people make
Right.
and the consequences of those choices.
The story of the East India Company, it's a warning about the dangers of unchecked ambition, greed, and disrespect for other cultures.
Well said. Thanks for taking us on this deep dive into the world of the East India Company.
It was my pleasure.
It's been a real eye-opener.
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
I did. Thanks for listening, everyone. Until next time, keep exploring.